Hello, my name is Jay Ponteri. I am the chair of Low Residency Creative Writing and also the Associate Dean of the Holly Ford School of Graduate Studies. We today are hosting an alumni panel. We have two extraordinary Holly Ford alum that we're going to be talking to. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So that's actually the first question is please introduce yourselves. We'll start with Elizabeth.
I figured my last name starts with an A, so I always go first. My name's Elizabeth Arzani, pronouns she, her, and I'm an interdisciplinary artist who studied in the visual studies program at PNCA and graduated in 2022. I would say my work right now is primarily between printmaking and sculpture. Sometimes that looks like I'm working with tin, sometimes that looks like I'm working with ceramics, and a lot of screen printing.
Elan, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Elan Chardin. I did the low-res program, also graduated in 2022. So started during lockdown in 2020. I teach adjunct at Southern Oregon University in Ashland, mostly drawing painting based, playing around with some kind of printmaking right now. Yeah, so I get to teach part-time and play in my studio.
Excellent, good introductions. I have made aware to the panelists the questions I'm going to be asking, but I also there might be some others that just get thrown in there. I'm already thinking of some others. They won't be too surprising. But also feel free to ask each other questions if you think of good ones that might be helpful for those interested in graduate school. Okay, first one. We'll start with Elan, just to give you a break from A. How did you imagine that graduate school might help your practice? What was it in your mind that you were thinking, oh, I'm going to do a grad program in visual arts?
So I graduated from my undergrad when I was in my 20s, and it was always since I started undergrad, was in my head, part of the map was I was going to do a graduate program. But I had kids, and I raised the kids, and I was never living anywhere near a graduate program that whole time. So I never had that opportunity. And then there were a couple of low-res programs that I started to see and hear about and try to figure out if it was going to fit my life. And so when I got to a certain point, it was like, I have to do this now, because it's just always been in my head. It's a thing I had to do. And I didn't know that it would factor in any way career-wise. That was not what it was based on, because I didn't think it was going to get me a job or make my art suddenly a big career, but it was just something I knew I needed to do for myself. So I thought that it would satisfy that need to do that, but also it would make me feel more committed to my practice, and that I was seeing it through, giving it what I meant to give it. So that's what I was thinking I was getting from it.
Thank you. Good.
What did it turn out like?
Well, that's the next question. We'll get there.
Okay.
Cricket's ready too for a question.
Yes.
For those of you on the stream, we have a couple dogs in the room with us, so we'll be talking to them. Oh, they can be seen. Yeah. Elizabeth, what about you?
I guess similarly to Elan, I always had that goal of wanting to go to grad school, even in undergrad. And I think it was in undergrad we had to make like our 5-year plan right before we were graduating. And I was like, okay, in 3 years, I'm going to go to grad school. And then I ended up teaching full-time as a K through 12 art teacher, and 3 years passed, and I still wasn't in grad school. And so I think at that time I like panic applied to a program that was where I was living at the time in Seattle, and I got rejected. And I was like, okay, maybe grad school isn't in my future because I got rejected to the one program where I live. Even though I didn't really want to go to that school, it was just like, that's where it was. That's where I was. So I think when I moved from Seattle and it became that kind of opened a door of, oh, if I can go anywhere, really. I'm not like tied down to one place anymore. So I started looking at programs all over the world. And when I opened that really big door of like, oh, if I can go anywhere, where should I land was a really big question. So it helped me identify that I really wanted an interdisciplinary program. And I found it really funny that even when I looked at the interdisciplinary programs, or they said they were interdisciplinary, they still made me apply for a program like printmaking, sculpture, and painting and drawing. I did like 3 separate interviews for one school. So I think it really came down to I wanted to go to grad school in a place where I was going to live for a while. I really wanted community. I really wanted access to facilities. I think it was seeing the print studio here that I was like, okay, yes, I can work here. And as a teacher, it didn't hurt my career either. All of a sudden, I could potentially work with adults or 18 years and older, and I was really curious about that. So it kind of checked all the boxes. Maybe not financially, but other boxes.
Okay, great. Those are really good answers. So I'm throwing in a surprise question, and I'll say what the question is, and then I'll give you each a little time to think about it.
Okay.
While I talk about my own experience of like what I think I wanted out of graduate school. Okay. So the surprise question at this moment is, do you have any advice, and it's okay if you don't, around putting together a portfolio? So that's a surprise question. I'm going to talk a little, and then I'll come back to you all for an answer. I wanted a couple things. I did specifically want a terminal degree because I've really felt called to teaching, and I wanted that to like be there for that calling in the way. But mainly I wanted a more intensive creative practice. Like I wanted the habit of writing. And I actually went to a low residency program, and the structure of low residency really helps create that habit because you have to leave the program and then go make. And you get experience of doing that again and again. And integrating making within your whatever's happening in your life. But I also really wanted a community and peers to be in connection with. And those are definitely things that when I left my program that I had. And often I would say that you end up, it's your peers that you end up doing collaborations with beyond the program for years to come. So that's a really valuable part of the community part. Okay, now we'll start with Elizabeth. Any advice on putting together a portfolio?
So when I was putting together my portfolio to apply to grad school, I was living in Luxembourg in Central Europe. So I kind of dedicated a year of like, okay, like kind of focusing on it like it was a job. Like, I'm going to make a new body of work, and this is the work that I'm going to use to submit to grad school. And I gave myself, I think, like parameters to work with and to show like all the different ways that I'm working, like with printmaking, with sculpture, and to have kind of a variety. But also giving myself enough time to get feedback from other people, talk to different programs. I toured PNCA in 2018 before I had moved to Luxembourg because I knew it was I loved Portland, the Pacific Northwest, so it kind of was serendipitous that I had gone to a portfolio review to get feedback, and I found the same person who I had toured with in 2018 in Paris, surprisingly. And just that like moment of reconnection a few years later and their feedback is like, okay, there might be something there. So I think, yeah, responding to the chance interactions and giving yourself time, being strategic, and also like having fun with it, having it be honest.
That was
Jesse.
Thank you. Elan.
So I had been out of school for like 30 years or something when I put a portfolio together, and I had not been on that. That wasn't my reality at all. I didn't even remember taking undergraduate classes at that point. So in retrospect, I think, since then and through my program, I've worked with mentors. And I think that in retrospect, it can be a great thing to find a mentor type person when you're in that mode where you're thinking about grad school, thinking about how you want to present yourself to those people, thinking about how you're talking about your work. So now when I meet people, whether they be younger or my age and kind of coming back to it, I always suggest that as a way to help understand what they're doing at that level, just prior to diving into grad school. So I think that's the main piece of advice I give.
Excellent. Good work on the improv, on the improvisation. Okay. Now I'm sort of taking it on the school timeline. Now you're in school. What experiences beyond expectation were really meaningful for you? What were one or two things that your graduate school program offered to you or extended to you that you hadn't planned on, or maybe you had, that were really meaningful to you? So we'll start with Elizabeth.
I guess I lifted my microphone. Two things that come to, three things. I think like Elan mentioned, the mentorship program was really big for me. Just like every week to be able to talk with someone. I think my first mentor was Emily Ginsberg, who's a faculty here, and just to have like an encyclopedia to like answer all your questions or give you questions. It was incredible, just the conversations, but also to kind of have agency over what the mentorship could be. I did a lot of Skillshare too. So I would be like, let's not talk, let's make things together, or I want to learn how to weld, and so that can be flexible or look many different ways. I think the surprises for grad school were the detour to ceramics. That was really unexpected. I think just having the studio in a gorgeous like in the glass building. I was like, yeah, I want to be in this space. And also, I think largely to conversations with Jay, it was thinking about writing as material for my visual art practice. For whatever reason, I had always put that in a different category that was separate from my art making, and that changed in grad school.
Awesome. That's great. Elan.
Can you state the question again really quick?
The question is, during your graduate school experience, what are one or two things that were really meaningful for you? And maybe surprising too, but they don't have to be surprising.
Okay, yeah. So I had never worked with mentors before, so that was a whole new thing, and that was really, that was a great experience. I mean, everybody, the official mentors, but then the people we worked with that weren't official mentors. So I don't think I had a clear vision of what I thought that guidance would look like. So I was just open to what it was, and that's played a critical role in how I approach my practice now. Another were some of the unexpected things, like taking part in the creative writing. So I didn't see that coming, and that was great. And that's still a big part of my experience. I think I thought there was going to be more sort of work within like actual studio practice with people, like, you know, but low res, I didn't understand quite that it was as independent as it was. And so you didn't get those sort of, you know, workshop type things or classes. So that was unexpected for me. And yeah, I think those are the main things that sort of I didn't know, but I didn't know. I rushed right in, too. So I didn't know what I was rushing into. By the time I decided to apply, it just sort of unfolded really quickly, and so I was like, I'm game to see what this is, just walking right into it. But it was a time of like everything was unexpected. It was COVID. It was lockdown. We were masked. We couldn't be near each other. It was the strangest experience, especially that first year, that I've ever had, I think. But to be in conversation with so many people that were trying to process that at the same time was probably key to sort of surviving that year or two.
I remember being asked a lot because we were in school at the same time, and yeah, 2020 is a bizarre time to be like, yeah, I'm going to start grad school. But it did feel like what you had mentioned, Elan, of if I don't start it, if I don't do it now, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it was actually such a unique experience in that I think out of like the 8 schools I applied to, PNCA was the only one that stayed hybrid. So where you could like book time in different places, and there were limited amounts of people who could be there. So often it looked like you were there with one instructor or a studio assistant or manager. And so the one-on-one time and having so much space, I feel like you can't get that again. Like it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Yeah. There was an intensity to that experience. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like that we're talking about the pandemic, actually, in a way that, like, because culturally, we are processing that time in a different way than we were processing it a couple years ago. You know, we're kind of telling stories about it in a way that feels like we're sort of beyond it, although that's questionable, of course. This is a little improv question. Sorry, Elan.
Okay.
What Elizabeth kind of touched on, like moving into ceramics and writing, and you actually talked about like doing more writing. Mm-hmm. Were there other new materials that were explored when you were here?
Scale. Scale was the thing that was explored here because we got these studios since it was pandemic, and I didn't realize what a privilege that was. But we had these, the classrooms, and I've had a studio. I'm really fortunate. I have a little like garage in my backyard. But my scale has always adapted to my situation. And so here I was able to work at a scale that was like 2-3 times larger than my own body, which was like a really interesting experience. I don't think I'll ever go back to it, but I had it, you know, and so that was that was just a really interesting experience to dive into. Yeah.
So for a larger context, the low-res visual studies students, their studios are in classrooms that during the regular school year, students are taking classes in. So the classrooms turn into studio spaces. The visual studies residential students, their studios are at the Glass Building, which Elizabeth mentioned. It's also the place where we have our ceramics and wood shop and whatnot. So the visual studies programs, they both have the same learning outcomes, actually, but they are just deployed in pretty different ways. And one thing that I think is unique about PNCA, and this includes creative writing, which is an outlier in a lot of ways because of the material of language, but we are definitely devoted to mentorship and arranging really substantive, extended mentorships for folks. So that's interesting to, of course, that's coming up. Okay, here's a good question. What was a joy? We'll start with you, Elan. What was a joy? And then what was a struggle? Good news first.
Yeah, of course. What was a joy? I had a tight group of friends that we actually all like. I had to travel here during the summers, and we all stayed at one of our friends' house in the summer. So it was a little bit like having our own little summer camp. And then we shared a studio together. And maybe that made us a little bit of a pod, but it was, we really helped each other through it, and that camaraderie was really lovely, and still exists. Tapping into, back to the mentorship is a big part, and because it was pandemic, there was this whole, the world actually got bigger in one way, and that was actually being able to call in mentors from anywhere in the world. And so I ended up choosing people that I admired from afar, and brought them into my life through the program. And they're, I'm still very close with one of them. Two of them, and actually, met them in New York, and so that's been really nice to have that, like my world get a little bigger that way. Struggles. There were so many struggles, just because of pandemic, because I trying to balance. I owned a gallery. I started to teach adjunct. I was doing this program, which is like having kind of 3 pretty big jobs to juggle. And my partner was locked out of the country. So I was like juggling a lot of things, and then family stuff, so those things were really difficult. I would say that one of the, there were some struggles with inner dynamics in our program, and that was, to be honest, one of the struggles that I didn't kind of like figure out how to work with. And I think that just happens in any sort of situations where you have a lot of strong-willed people. So that was one of the struggles for me. I would have to call out a name. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Elizabeth,
All
one
right.
joy or more
Okay.
and a struggle.
All right. I think a big joy was just being a student again. I had been teaching, and teaching in the pandemic sucks. So it was kind of like, deciding to be a student again, to be really selfish with my time. Like, I remember a friend being like, this is your time to be selfish. Like, so not actually kind of having the opposite, where I wasn't working full time for the first time in a really long time, and I was treating being a student as my full-time job. So using that to really explore, play, like try new materials, meet new people, that was a big joy. And struggle, I think because I took being a student so seriously, when other people didn't in my cohort, it really frustrated me. And critiques are long, and sometimes when I felt like attention wasn't reciprocal, it frustrated me. Yeah, so I think inner dynamics can be, you can't know what that's going to look like, and so it's like how to negotiate all of those things.
Excellent. Improvise follow-up question based on something Elan you said. What would help, like, what do you think was one helpful thing in terms of navigating all of the stuff, like the workload, I have these 3 things going on. How did you, what was one strategy maybe that helped you do that? Do you remember?
This is like the key question.
Or it
Like,
could-
did you get anything
it
out of
could
that?
be now. It could be now. Like, what helps you? What strategy helps you bring you back to your studio?
That's interesting. That's a huge, like, putting things aside and just focusing on the studio. Honestly, I think it's having things ahead of me and on the calendar. That's a big part of it. It's a very practical thing. And so you can't get lost in the struggle, because you have to plow through it. And I also figured that out. I did a residency recently, and I figured out that I can waste a lot of time in the studio and get caught up in my life, and let that take over even if I'm in the studio space. But on the residency, like, I was too self-conscious of everybody else working around me, and would have felt very lame sitting there doing nothing or being distracted. And so I kept their stride, and kept working at that, matching them with that, and that helped me get past blocks.
Excellent. Elizabeth?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, well, one, I just want to emphasize the calendar part.
Yeah.
That seems like a really good thing for all of us to think about, like having a calendar, one, using it, but also like what can I get on there that's going to help pull me back into my practice?
Yeah.
I like that. So the question is, during your time or now, what helps you like navigate all of the things, the pressures or the struggles, or was there a strategy that helped you, like for the interpersonal stuff, like what helped you turn back away from that frustration back to like, or channeling it into kind of a constructive space?
Well, I carry a sketchbook with me everywhere I go, including here. And I started doing this when I was teaching full-time in a public school. Wednesdays would be staff meetings, so I would draw so I wouldn't say the things I would regret later. So I kind of did that in crits too.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
And it just helped me be calmer. And yeah, kind of put my like observations and cynicism and note-taking onto the paper rather than verbalizing what maybe I would regret later.
That's awesome. See, I show Elizabeth's sketchbooks to my drawing class, in their sketchbook examples. I talk about this because she has images of her sketchbooks in like lecture halls and on the airplane and everything. It's a kind of obsessive. It's great.
Cool.
It's true. I have scanned 14 years worth of sketchbooks. I'm like 40 sketches behind on scanning, but
Wow. That's cool. It's amazing.
a lot of this room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed your sketches also, I will say.
I don't think I answered your question, did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah. Low-res creative writing faculty person, Vicky now, famously said during a meeting when we were talking about thesis and trying to like make it work better, which is culmination. All of the programs have culmination projects. Like V was like, it's a coffin, I swear it's a coffin, and we need to turn it into a boat. So my question is, what is something that lived within the program that was able to sort of float out beyond the program that's been really helpful? Like what times do you experience when you're in your practice or even beyond your practice, do you feel your experience of the program serving you? We'll start with Elizabeth.
I think it's the people, like building relationships, like making community. Prior to grad school, I was living in Central Europe in Luxembourg, and I felt pretty isolated in community. I mean, I have great friends there still, but I think in the art community, I felt isolated. So that was a big part of what I wanted with grad school and even picking a school where I was going to stay in the city. I think it really extends to a lot of what I do, like even the full-time job that I have. It's founded by a PNCA alum. I'm still friends with many of my mentors. I'm here weekly. I end up being a mentor for people in the visual studies program. I love talking and seeing what they're doing, but also like I have even initiated where a few of us from my cohort, we do monthly studio visits, so we rotate. Because I'm not that artist who works in a corner by themselves. I need feedback and I want to talk to other people.
Cool, thank you. Elan, how does the boat float for you?
Thinking. I think that there's something about having sort of that final year being such a sort of for my cohort, it was such a strange year of navigating so many things and trying to pull off our culminating show, and trying to work together, trying to work around obstacles, all this sort of thing that we had to do. Having done our dissertations and sort of all those things we hadn't done before. And no matter I don't think that I did it perfectly or even necessarily felt that was a culmination of everything I had done. There's something to the moving through that process that that opens that experiential knowledge that you can always move through that process. So I think that was a big part of it. Like, things don't seem so terminal to me. They seem very like, oh, I will move through this. I'll pull the rabbit out of the hat. I will be done with this thing at some point, and then I will. Yeah, I think that's it.
So 2 questions ahead, giving you advance warning here. This is 2 questions ahead.
Okay.
Like, what artists you're thinking about, what writers you're reading. So just planting that seed. But the next question is one that I told you about, and that is, when you left your programs, was there something you felt you needed to shed? Was there something you needed to let go of, and that was actually really helpful to come back into your practice beyond the program? We'll start with Elan and cricket.
Okay.
I keep not acknowledging cricket enough here.
Sure, her hair. That's what she said. For me, it was overthinking, and it's it was very clear to me the first year out of grad school that I couldn't stop overthinking. I second-guessed myself so much, and I had an inner voice, an inner critic that was so loud at that point that I because I was trying to meet this bar for myself. That doesn't, I don't know, doesn't exist, you know? So I was having to remove all that and just be, more comfortable with the process of, you just do this because you do this, and it doesn't matter. And I had been more comfortable with that before grad school, and this is not to put down grad school, but it makes you in your head. It puts you in your head a lot, or it did me. And so I had to get back out of that a little bit, and get back into my gut and my body, and just do the thing because that's what I told myself I would do every day. And I think that's taken a while. And throwing myself in different experiences has helped that. Yeah, does that answer it?
Yeah,
okay.
It does. Great, thank you. Elizabeth?
Can I just say same answer?
Yes. Ditto.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of critique can be the why question for everything, but why? And even when I, for my thesis, painted a whole wall blue, I was like, okay, I have to be prepared to answer why blue. So it was really liberating to go into making on my own terms without cross out why and just have fun for a bit.
Without Sharita and I constantly asking you questions.
Yeah. They're good questions, though.
Yeah.
I like questions.
I would actually offer an answer to that question. I always talk to the people who are leaving the program. I always sort of plant that seed that part of their leaving the program is to actively unlearn some things. So, and for me, it was really being able to slow down my practice. And it's not, that doesn't mean that I was like, oh, I'm spending less time doing it, but it just meant that I could spend more time and a slower time on say a page of writing. Whereas when I was working on packets in graduate school, I felt the need to motor. And so really letting that go, I think, was really important and essential. And then also having a lot fewer voices in my head was really helpful for me.
That's so interesting because I feel like I'm the opposite. Because in grad school, I was just a student, so I had time to just be a student. And then after grad school, it's like, okay, now back to full-time job. And like, you know, the feeling of having 3 big things or more that you're juggling was suddenly my reality. So the time to make was lessened. So it's more like, oh, okay, I'm doing things kind of faster.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
Jay, there's a student online that has a question.
Sure. Let me come over with the microphone, or I can look at the question. I'm curious how each of these individuals keep up their energy and creativity throughout their grad school journey. Strategies, coping mechanisms.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think it was just being introduced to so many resources, new material, tons of reading, ideas that other people are giving you in crits, and I usually did the like list of yes, maybe, absolutely not, to like sort through all of those different suggestions. And I think it was just being kind of submersed in that environment, and always, I mean, for me, I was always in the studio. So I guess that kind of propelled that energy.
Yeah, I have the same question, actually. Looking back at it, I don't know how I did three jobs, basically, at the same time. But they did kind of feed each other. So it was not like I was, having to work, at a 9-to-5 job that had nothing to do with art. So they all fed each other, and that was helpful. I think it was, there was a lot of connections with people. We would try to motivate each other, or, affirm each other, check in, those sorts of things to kind of keep connected, because on low res, you don't see each other all the time. And so trying to kind of stay in communication so that you could bring your head back to the community. That was a part of, because finding the things that give you joy out of the program and keeping tapped into that is a part of keeping the energy, I think.
I also think sometimes it was like using how you were feeling or what was happening in a moment to respond to it in the work. Like, I just remember the absurdity of being in a pandemic, having moved to a new country, coming back to the country, new city. I didn't have any of my stuff yet, so I'm starting grad school with very little material. I even came to the school and met Jay and was scrounging around for materials. And I think there were also wildfires too, so it was just like layers. So I made the most absurd sculpture of layers of found materials that barely stood up. It was like forcing itself to stand. So it's kind of like using what you have.
I forgot about that. Our town burned during the grad program.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. Now to the improvised question of what artist are you paying attention to, or writers at the moment? We'll start with Elan and Cricket.
She doesn't look at art.
She is art.
She is art. I kind of hoard writers and artists. I'm kind of constantly pulling, trying to find new artists and look at. But lately, I've been, because I teach drawing, a lot of the artists that I'm looking at have to do with that, and so I'm looking at them differently, and so. Right now, I'm actually looking at artists that use space really differently in drawings than I thought they were doing it. So Pierre Bonnard, Aubrey Leventhal, and then looking at Eastern landscapes, wood blocks, and how they use space. perspective. So I've been diving into that a lot. And then people who are using very active lines, and so that's like Bonnard and Giacometti, Katakolowicz. So I'm looking very intentionally at artists that are relating to what I'm doing with my drawing. Writers, I'm dipping in and out of, I've got stacks and stacks of books all around me, and it's like I would just be hard pressed to come up with, because I'm just dipping all the time. And so, yeah, I'm reading everything from sort of like dipping into poetry, dipping into biographies. I'm reading a bio on La Citacella right now. Like, that's just, yeah, so I'm just kind of, but the reading is something that I think that got directed a lot from graduate school. That opened up a lot for me of what I could find and how to approach reading. So, but yeah.
Excellent answer.
Yeah, I'm a little all over the place always, but I feel like was it last weekend? There were a ton of shows that opened here in Portland. There's a great show at the Lumber Room. Always lovely to see Louise Bourgeois in person, like her work in person. It was incredible. Also, there was artwork on an elevator, so just finding art in unexpected places is really exciting. I did travel for my birthday this past August to go see in person the Ruth Asawa show, the retrospective at SF MoMA. I caught it like the last weekend, and I had known about Ruth's sculptures, the wire sculptures, but getting to see her drawings and some of her sketchbooks in person was incredible. But I do even distinctly remember using one of my mentor meetings to do a field trip and go to the Lumber Room and see an Arlene Sheckett sculpture in person. And I've been able to see more of her work in person, and it's incredible, just using ceramics, wood, and steel together. I mean, the list can go on. Like, I got to meet Anne Hamilton here in Portland, and she was lovely and signed a book and incredible. And I think about the first time I saw her show at the Henry in Seattle. Yeah, there's so many. I could go on and on. But books. I'm similar to Elan, and I have a lot of stacks. And I was trying to read Olivia Lang's book, The Lonely City. And then I realized, well, it's kind of depressing. Like, I can't read this on its own. I need to read it with another one. So then I started reading Mary Oliver, Upstream. And I was camping, so I was like, oh, I'll just go on this river theme. So I kind of use reading as a kind of a, how many books can I read at one time? I think I might have 2 books that Jay, you've given me in my bag that I'm going to start soon. And then I was recommended another book that I want to look up. I think it was called Secret Theft, a book of poetry and about commonplace. Yeah. A lot of lists.
Yeah.
Great answers. I love that question. Final question, and then we'll go to questions in the audience. So for you, Elan, it would be like early June before you started the program, and Elizabeth, it would be August. Imagine yourselves at that time. What would you tell now? What would you tell that self? What advice would you give that self? Something you know now, but you didn't know then that might be helpful. We will start with Elizabeth.
I mean, I think I'm constantly telling myself this as like a mantra of like, you have done hard things, you can do more hard things.
Amazing. Elan?
I think, what would I tell myself? I think it would be to let go of the struggles, to try to minimize attachment to what the struggle is. It's easy to get caught in it and find it very heavy and a little overwhelming. And I think that the practice is to find your way around it rather than like struggling so much. I mean, they always say, yeah, you got to go through it, but sometimes you can avoid it. I think, it's letting go of the struggles sometimes.
Cricket's answer is seek out more treats.
Yes, and she knows where they are.
Okay, questions to audience, virtual and active audience members? Morgan or Sasha? Or
Our
audience
audience.
members? Okay.
I am curious if you came into the program with a fairly clear understanding of what body of work you wanted to explore, or if you showed up knowing this was the right place and time, but not knowing what you were wanting to work on, and how that changed over the course of the program.
Yes, that's a great question. Because my undergrad was in painting and drawing, and after undergrad, I became more and more interested in printmaking and sculpture. But a lot of those require a lot of facilities and access to equipment. I really wanted to pursue that more. But the cost of wood got really expensive. I thought I was going to be exploring more woodworking. And so I kind of pivoted because I found that the plaster, maybe it wasn't free, but no one told me otherwise. So I started doing slip cast mold making, and that was my weird entry point into ceramics. I think more for practicality. And I'm still obsessed with ceramics. Was that answering all of your question?
So I thought it was coming in here to be a painter. And it was, it was, I had two different directors in my program. And my first director wasn't a big fan of painting, I don't think. I would say really pushed why painting all the time. And so a second director, not so much, but I was starting with the first director. So so I ended up like this was not pre-grad school me, but grad school me disassembled painting. Just decided to take it apart and like figure out what it like to sort of take that question super literally, like why painting. And I never thought I would be doing that. I haven't done it since. It's not where my practice lies. But it was how I responded to that question that wouldn't go away. And so I learned a lot from it. And I found my own work through it. But so if you hadn't shown me my MFA show when I was applying to grad school, but I had that like those glasses on, I don't think I would have really questioned that. So it was not where I was expecting I was going with it. Grad school to me turned out to be a process, not an ends to the means kind of thing. It was, it taught me a lot, but I don't have that work anymore. Like literally, I have a few pieces from that. So.
Any questions in the virtual space?
Not yet.
Yeah.
So this is, I guess, a little bit of a follow-up with that is when do you feel like that kind of paradigm shift happened? Was it like immediately you felt kind of like the change of expectations for what your work looks like? Was it immediate? Was it kind of like something you developed like throughout the first year? Anything like that, if that makes sense?
For me?
Yeah.
You mean did that shift toward painting happen in the first year? It began to. It didn't break out of painting until the final year, but I think I think that the question was so stuck in my head that I couldn't. It definitely within the first year changed how I even held my tools. Like I kind of, yeah, it was pretty profound in the first year. Yeah.
And you can, I'm interested about you too. I know you said it was kind of like, part of it was like availability, which is, you know, how just the process, but yeah, where you kind of accepted the change.
Well, I think some of it was like the crit schedule. It's like, okay, at this point, we kind of had this like high stakes, low stakes. The high stakes was your longer crit. The low stakes was like a shorter one. And for my first low stakes one, I still didn't have any of my stuff. So I remember my mentor at the time being like, use what you have. I had a lot of cardboard. So I had a very funny sculpture made out of cardboard on wheels that didn't stand up and had to lean in the corner. And then, but it was in that crit where I remember getting the question, what about your words? Could they be the work? And that was I think that was a question that stuck with me similarly. And I, for whatever reason, had a really hard time taking my own words that were like bound in a small book and making them big for everybody to read on the wall. So I like had to cut and crop them and make them illegible in order to make them larger. So that was kind of this like curious question, and I guess just learning a little bit more about myself in that process. And then for the follow-up high stakes crit, it was like remaking that cardboard sculpture, and I had more materials, but still just throwing everything at it. And I remember, I think it was Sharita who was like, you put carpet padding in this sculpture. And I usually think that's a really gross material, but I'm intrigued by it in this way. and I took that as a big win of I think exploring all possibilities in that first year.
I'm a little bit curious about the talking about your work part, because I found that to be a big journey in my MFA experience to like go from making on impulse and kind of like going back and like figuring out why I did that and kind of coming up with a mission statement, which when I work with undergrads, I find that sometimes is an epiphany point for them also to be like, oh wait, there's meaning. So I wondered what your experience was with the lecturing and the talking about yourself and what that did for you guys.
I think there was that was one of the things that was really valuable to me. There was so much sort of bouncing around of ideas, like, you know, things you were reading that you're like, I don't even know why we're reading this, you know, this is for you, just thick stuff to like get through. And then, you know, talking about it, all of that became really, it's like it warms up your voice, your ability to actually be able to respond to what you're taking in. And then there's like, I think maybe crits weren't the place that I actually like found a voice to be able to talk about my work. I just don't work well under pressure like that. But writing became a big part of it. And so I still use, I began writing every single day during that time, each morning. And I still do that. So like your sketchbooks, I've got tons of these binders. And that has helped me find a way to talk about my work, but just understanding that literally writing and writing and writing. And so now I cut and paste on the computer a lot when I write, because I need to get it all out of there without thinking about it, and then forming it into clear thought. So I learned how my way of figuring out my work worked for me. And then talking with the mentors every couple of weeks, that gave you this chance that was more intimate, just one-on-one, to be able to like formulate your thinking. That's why I recommend it even before grad school.
Can I follow up with saying, like, then how did that translate into your thesis presentation when you're
Yeah,
doing
you
that
know,
kind
I
of
was like
presenting?
so nervous about thesis presentation. And I told Erin I was just going to read poetry for half an hour.
Which would have been awesome.
Well, it kind of went in and out of it. It was a weird... well, I worked with Jay in writing also, so then it got weird. Writing got really strange. And so when I had to present it, it wasn't like a thesis. Like I didn't have a really good, like, well, if this, then this, and this is why this. It was a lot of meandering through my thinking. I've never gone back to look at that. I would never. But it was an experiment. It was part of the creative process for me to figure out how to speak about my work in a way that I could only try in grad school. Like, I didn't feel like I could try that outside of that more safe environment of people who had known me for a little while. I don't know if this totally answers your question. I don't think that, like, I would present my work and how I talk about it now the same way I did for my thesis. But I really appreciated that experience and the freedom to be able to do it the way that I did it. But I think the feedback I got was, be specific. So maybe I wasn't so specific. But Molly thought I was very specific.
Elizabeth?
I mean, I think what Elan said rings true for me too. Just the many different ways to talk about your work, and that I hadn't even really thought about, like the elevator pitch of like, okay, how to simplify what your practice is in like a sentence or two, or like 5 minutes, or someone who has a very short attention span, and also the like formal presenting versus the casual with people you know or people you don't, like the intimacy of like a mentorship, or even just studio visits with artists you admire or complete strangers. That was really helpful. Also, yeah, kind of being forced to have a microphone and be in front of people and talking. That is something that has never been easy for me. I always thought like, okay, with teaching, you know, that should be a natural thing. And no, it's like every time I do it, it still feels hard. So usually on crit days or anytime I'm speaking with a microphone, I do what you do actually, is I write. Because I rather have a script than do the improv.
Yeah.
Today's not bad because I know Jay and I can kind of anticipate. There's a lot of improv questions with Jay. But I still this morning did some writing of like, okay, what did I do in grad school? What did I do after? What is my one sentence about my work?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have a question myself.
So how do you feel that what you did in grad school and the thought process you had about your work from grad school has affected your work after grad school and what you do now.
Well, a lot of what I was doing in grad school was centering language, which was a bit of a surprise for me. That was something that I was working on for my portfolio. I was referencing language because I was living in a country with 3 different languages, which I didn't know. So I thought that that was just going to stay as a thing that I did there, because when I moved back to the US, that was going to be not a thing anymore. And then what I discovered was actually when I came back, miscommunications or failure of language exist even in my own language, and it was still difficult to communicate. So it was so funny how I had to do this thing of moving to a different country to see what was right in front of me, that a lot of my work is about how messages are transmitted and how that affects the way in which they're received. I think my work is still about that, but it's been more of the lens through like thinking about homonyms whole and whole, H-O-L-E and W-H-O-L-E, and the adding and subtracting and context and mapping. And I kind of think about wholes more as like a space to ask more questions or care for a question. So it's, I guess, a bit more expansive, but that all feels related.
It's so funny because I worked with that too.
You can say ditto.
Yeah, ditto. How did what I did in grad school affect how I'm working right now? Is that sort of essentially what you're? So I think it's been what, 3 years now? I think I've stopped overthinking for now, so that's good news. I think that I think that all of these things are in there in a way that's like, okay, so like learning a language, you have to like kind of stop and think about it until you're fluent with it, right? And then when you hit that point of fluency, it's like you don't have to keep stopping and thinking about all those things. It's not like I'm cranking out work, but when I'm working, I can get into this flow because I think I don't. I have this sense of confidence of knowing myself through the process, that I can trust myself to just work. So it's not a conscious thing so much. As it is like, I feel like there's a bit of more of a fluency there.
Do we have any questions on the street?
You need your
Okay. Cricket, do you have any questions? Thank you for attending our alumni panel. Let's give Elan and Elizabeth a round of applause. Thank you.